Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary from Mary's Nest, and here on my YouTube channel I share traditional recipes for making nutrient-dense foods using simple ingredients. And today we're going to make Beet Kvass. It's a delightful, effervescent, and probiotic-rich beverage. Now the first thing that we need to do when we make Beet Kvass is get the beets ready to put them in the jar. So these are organic beets, but don't worry, if buying organic beets is not in your budget, you can buy non-organic beets because we're going to peel them. Now the first thing that I want to do is cut off the stems here, but we're going to save the stems and save the greens because these are all edible and very nutritious. You can saute them up with a little butter, a little olive oil, maybe throw in a little garlic. Makes a wonderful side dish. So don't discard these. I'm just going to put them to the side, and I'm just going to cut off. This guy's running away. I'm just going to cut off all the greens. Get these stems and greens to the side. There we go. Oh, it's going to be beautiful, beautiful side dish when we saute those up. Okay. Alrighty, now we have the 4 beets and we remove the greens. And some recipes will call for using 2 to 3 beets. I like to use 3 to 4, and since I have 4, I'm going to use all 4. I find it just makes the Beet Kvass beverage a little richer, and so since the beets came in bunches of 2, I just got 2 bunches and decided that I'm going to use the 4 beets. Now, the next thing we need to do is peel the beets. When you do this, just a little kitchen tip, I highly recommend if you've got a red cutting board and a red towel, this is the time to bring them out, because these can be a little messy and they do stain. And if you have an apron, this is the time to don it. Well, what we're going to do is we're just going to cut these little tails off. Now, don't throw these out either. We're going to put these in a bowl here and we're going to save these. And we're going to use these in a vegetable broth. They're wonderful, they're nutritious, and definitely don't waste them. Now, if they're not organic, you can discard them. Alrighty, let me get the rest of these tails off. This one's just got a little tiny one. Now, next thing we need to do is we need to peel these. You may want to put gloves on for this. The beets do release their juices as you're peeling them, and they can stain your hands. I don't worry about it. I usually can wash them off fairly well, and I'm cooking all the time and washing my hands so much, so it eventually fades pretty easily. But if you want to, definitely this is the time to put gloves on before we start to peel them. And now that I'm going to peel them, I'm just going to bring you in a little closer so you can see exactly what I do. Okay, now we're going to get ready to peel the beets. The first thing I want to say is if you're using bare hands, make sure they're clean. And if you're using gloves, make sure they're clean, because we don't want to introduce any bad bacteria into the jar in which we're going to put the cut beets to make the Beet Kvass. So the first thing that you want to do is, if you have a little paring knife, that'll work great. And you just come in like this. Let's see what's the best way to show you. And all you're going to do, whatever way you're comfortable, just come right down and get the skin off. I like to keep it flat on the cutting board because it's safer. Give it, feet where we cut off the tops or the tails, and then just go as close to the beet as you can and just remove the skin. Now, something that I want to say about this, as we're peeling these beets, you can leave the skin on if they're organic. If they're not organic, I definitely would remove the skin. But if they're organic, you can leave the skin on. However, I have made Beet Kvass both ways, with the skin on and the skin off. And I prefer it with the skin off. I find that with the skin on, the flavor can just be a little too earthy. But I think that if you see any little spots that don't look perfect or like that, you just get those off. But that's my personal preference, is that we remove the skin. Just feel it gives the kvass a little bit of a nicer flavor. I'm just picking it up to get the last of the bits of this. Having a sharp paring knife like this works wonderful. And these are nice and small and easy to handle. Alrighty, so we've got one done. I'm going to peel the rest of these and then I'll bring you back. Okay, well, I've got the beets all peeled, and what I'm going to do is take the peelings and put them in this dish here, and I'm going to save these to make a nice vegetable broth. A little tip that I'll share is that in trying to keep real food cooking as affordable as possible, try to waste as little as possible. And these will make a wonderful, wonderful addition to a nice vegetable broth. Okay, now here's our beet. We've got its feet down like that. You want to take this time, I find it's a little easier if you have a chef's knife or some, a larger knife instead of the paring knife. And we're going to cut these into smaller pieces. Now, a tip about this, don't cut them too small, because if you cut them too small, when they're in the jar fermenting, they will ferment too quickly, and you may actually make like a beet hooch, a beet alcohol, and you don't want to do that. You want to make a kvass. So, cut it in half. And then put it down like that again. We've got feet. Normally what I like to do is, this is sort of a medium-sized beet, cut it in half, and then, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm going to take 4 slices across this one. Actually 3 slices to get 4 bits here. Now, I just want to show you what the size is. So as you'll see, it's about the size of the, first joint of my thumb. And I have small hands. But this is a good size. Even, let me see. Yeah, maybe something like this. This one is a little small, but that's okay. Let me see these. Yeah, I think this is a good size. Alrighty, so I'm just going to put those aside, and I'm going to continue to cut these up, and then we'll get ready to put them in the jar. Well, I've got the beets all cut up, and the next step that we're going to do is simply put them into this canning jar. The jar that I'm using is a half-gallon jar, and we're just going to drop them right in. It couldn't be easier. It's flying in. You can also do this in a quart-size jar, canning jar, or any jar that you have, really. I like to use the canning jars. I'll explain in a minute why. But if you do it in a quart-size jar, you'll just want to use about half the amount of beets. So I'm just going to continue to get these all in. And then I'll show you what the next thing we're going to do is. Alrighty, let's get those in. Perfect. And you see this is perfect. They fill the jar about halfway up, and that's what you're looking for. At least this is what I like to do. I think some recipes may call for, as I mentioned earlier, a few less beets, but I feel that the beet kvass just is more watery and doesn't have as rich a flavor. So the next thing we're going to do, this is very easy. All we're going to do is drop the salt onto the beets. And this, again, like I use when I make sauerkraut, is the Celtic sea salt. And it's the coarse coarse ground one. You'll see, it's a very coarse grind to it. And I have 2 tablespoons, and I'm going to put that right in. I don't worry about dissolving the salt first in the water. I've never found that to be necessary. It will dissolve and it'll be just fine. And that saves you a step. Now, one thing I want to mention. Some people will add whey. They'll cut back on the salt and they'll add some whey. And whey, as you may know, is the byproduct of various cultured dairy. The thing about the whey is I like it just fine to drink it and add it with sparkling water and drink it. I think I mentioned that in my sauerkraut video. But I don't like adding it to fermented beverages. I find that the flavor of that comes through and changes the flavor that I'm looking for. I find it changes the flavor of sauerkraut, and I find it changes the flavor of Beet Kvass. So instead of 1 tablespoon of sea salt and a 1/4 cup of whey, I just like to use 2 tablespoons of sea salt. It works beautifully, and the coarse ground, so it's not the fine ground, just the coarse ground, it works just fine. It's going to ferment beautifully, and it's going to be very tasty. So I just want to give you that tip. If you do want to use the whey, you certainly can. Then you can decrease the salt. But I don't find the beverage particularly salty. So you're going to want to try, some different ways and see what you like. And if you've done it with whey, I'd be interested in hearing what your thoughts are in the comments below if you like the taste. Alrighty. Now, the next thing we're going to do is add spring water. It couldn't be easier. Now, to make Beet Kvass, you want to use spring water. Now, if you don't have access to spring water, don't worry. You can use the water from your tap, but you'll want to boil it and let it cool, or you just want to pour some and let it sit overnight. And the reason for this is you want to let the chlorine evaporate, because the chlorine in water can hinder the good bacteria's ability to grow and to make this a probiotic-rich beverage. So keep that in mind when you're choosing what water you want to use, but you do have options. Alrighty, now this is spring water. I've got a little bit left in this bottle, so I'm going to pour this in. Alrighty, and then I'm going to continue to pour this in, and I'm going to go right up to the rim. Well, this part right here, the neck. You can see it's already a beautiful color. Alrighty, that's perfect. Well, we've got this filled to the right amount with water, and now I want to talk to you about what's the right lid to use as you're fermenting. These are plastic storage lids that are made specifically for canning jars. Now, when I'm fermenting on the counter, I don't use this. And the reason is Beet Kvass, water kefir or water kefir, depending on how you say it, sauerkraut, these type of things become very bubbly and fizzy, and they need to release their carbon dioxide. And I find that if I put this on and it's sitting on my counter and it's bubbling and fizzing up, that when I go to release some of the carbon dioxide and then tighten it again to keep out the oxygen, sometimes the buildup can be fairly significant. And when I go to release it, it can go boom, like, almost frightens me a little. So I tend to not use this. What I use this for is once I'm done fermenting this, I'll change out the lid I do use, which I'll show you in a minute, and then I put this lid on and put it in the refrigerator, because once you put this in the refrigerator, when it's gotten to the taste and that you like, and the effervescence that you've liked, the fermentation is going to slow down significantly in the fridge, and so that at that point this lid is appropriate. But what I do instead is I like to use a canning lid and a canning ring, and the reason for that is this goes on very easily, and then I just do finger tight. You don't have to crank it, just finger tight. And as I see the fizziness building up, I'll loosen the ring. And sometimes, if this is loose, great, no problem. It'll release some of the carbon dioxide. I'll put the ring back on, leave it for another day, let more fizz build up, and so on and so forth. However, sometimes the fizz, as I mentioned, is very significant, and this will actually make a seal. And why I like using this as opposed to this is very easy to remove without any big fanfare. I don't know what else to call it. I just use the dull end of a can opener if it's real tight and I can't pry it off with my fingers, and it just poof like that, and the carbon dioxide comes out, and that's it. It just feels safer. So that's all you do. So put your canning lid on, put put your ring on. As I said, you're welcome to use this. Just be a little prepared that when you do loosen it to let out some of the buildup, that it may have a little force to it. So that's all you do. Now what I like to do is make sure that it's on securely, and I'll just give it, as you see, the salt has really already dissolved. And this is just turning a beautiful color. But if I see that, you know, it's not particularly dissolved, I'll just give it a little shake like that. And that's it. And now all we need to do is put this in a warm place in your kitchen, preferably, that is undisturbed, on a counter or on top of your refrigerator or in a pantry, anywhere where it can sit at room temperature. And, you know, room temperature, I know, is different in every home and depending on what time of year it is, but somewhere between about 68 degrees to about 85 degrees. So you have a lot of leeway. I live in Central Texas, and this is the month of August, and it can be 100 degrees outside. So the coolest we're going to get it in our home is going to be about 80. So that also, too, I want to share with you, does affect the speed of the fermentation. The warmer it is, the quicker it'll ferment. So, how do you know when it's ready? Well, what you want to do is you're going to watch for the bubbles coming up, and the color is going to deepen. And after a few days, take your lid off. You know, you may have been taking it each day, depending on how much bubbles you say. You may be releasing some of that pressure every day. But after a few days, check it. Take a clean spoon and take a taste. See how you like it. Is it effervescent? Is it flavorful? Is it just generally to your liking? I sometimes, you know, depending on the variety of beets and whatnot, you know, it's nature and all the beets are different. I can leave it on my counter sometimes for a week. And then it'll really be a nice, deep, rich red, and it'll have the flavor that I'm looking for. At that point, what you're going to want to do is use a mesh strainer over a bowl or a large measuring cup, whatever you have, and strain out the beets. And then put the Beet Kvass, I just store it in this, but you can definitely decant it into a bottle, whatever you want. As a matter of fact, the one in my refrigerator that I'm going to show you, I believe I did decant into a bottle. But whatever you have is fine. And the good news is, this is a very frugal and affordable beverage to make because you can reuse the beets. And you're just going to want to repeat all the steps that we just did. You're going to want to put the beets back in the jar. No need to rinse it out. Any little good bacteria that might remain in there will be very helpful to it. You put the beets back in. Take this time maybe about a quarter of a cup of the already made Beet Kvass, and you can add that in too, just as a little insurance policy to help feed the good bacteria. And if you do that, you probably only need to use 1 tablespoon of sea salt because you've got all of the good beneficial bacteria in that quarter or half cup, whatever amount you want to use to get the fermentation going. And then you'll do the same thing. Put your lid on, put it in a warm place in your kitchen where it can sit undisturbed, and just keep your eye on it over the next couple of days and watch the effervescence begin, and taste it and see at what point you like it. Now, pretty much all you're going to get out of it is 2 batches of good Beet Kvass. But don't worry, you're not going to waste these beets. These beets have become very probiotic rich now that they've been going through this fermentation process. And you can cut them up, grate them up, whatever the case may be, and put them in a salad. They're wonderful. They're tart, they're tangy, and they add a real nice, real lovely taste. And speaking of salads, in addition to drinking your Beet Kvass, you can also use it in place of vinegar when you're making a salad dressing. And that's a nice combination of things, to have the grated beets that you use to make the Beet Kvass and a salad dressing in which you use some of the liquid Beet Kvass, the drinkable Beet Kvass, to make your vinaigrette. So I'm going to put this canning lid back on and put the ring back on. finger tight. It's really all you need to do. And I'm just going to set this aside for now. And I'm going to go into my refrigerator, and I'm going to, well, first I'm going to wash my hands so that you can see how stained or not so stained they look, in case you decide to do this without wearing gloves. But I'm going to go into my refrigerator, and I'm going to get out the bottle of Beet Kvass that I have and show you what it looks like, and we'll take a taste. Well, this is the Beet Kvass that I took out of my refrigerator that I had fermented a while ago. And so I decanted it. I didn't remember, it was funny. I thought a lot of times I just leave it in, I drain out the beets and transfer it to another quart-sized jar. But this time I was a little fancy and did put it into decanted it into a nice bottle. And let's just give this a taste. As you see, the color, it's just beautiful. It becomes very rich, especially, and something I want to mention to you, you're going to ferment it on the counter, and then you're going to strain the beets, and then you're going to refrigerate it. Some people put it in the back of their refrigerator and let it slow ferment for another 6 months. And the flavor will get richer and richer. And this has actually been in my refrigerator a good while. And the flavor will get richer and richer and richer. The saltiness will decrease less and less, and it's just delightful. So let's give this a taste. Well, that's very good, very good. I like Beet Kvass very much. Now, something I want to mention about this, as I mentioned, putting it in the back of your freezer, not your freezer, your refrigerator. You can put this, once you strain it and refrigerate it, you can start drinking it right away. Or if you want, you can put it in the back of your refrigerator and let it just slow ferment over many months. And see how you like it. See how you like it after a month, after 2 months, so on and so forth. And something that's very nice to do with Beet Kvass, you have to remember, beets are in season, they come into season around June, and will start to fade off September, October, or so. So if you make Beet Kvass over the summer, strain the beets and decant it into a bottle, add some cloves and some orange peel, and then put it back in the back of your refrigerator. And then come Christmas time, take it out and see how you like it. It can make, prepared like that with the orange peel and some cloves, it can make a wonderful after-dinner cordial, especially for people who don't drink alcohol. It's probiotic rich. It'll help with digestion, especially after large holiday meals. And the taste is delightful. A little bit of citrus, a little bit of clove, very festive and very holiday time. So that's just a little something I want to share. Alrighty, well, I'm just going to put this to the side for now and just give you one more look at this. It's going to be beautiful. I'm going to put this on my counter and let this ferment, and I hope you'll do the same too. And if you'd like complete instructions for how to make this Beet Kvass, please refer to my website, marysnest.com. And if you like this video, I hope you'll give me a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you're interested in learning more about traditional foods cooking, I hope that you'll subscribe to my channel and be sure to click on the notification bell that'll let you know each time I upload a video. Well, that's all for today, but thank you so much for joining me here, and I look forward to having you joining me here next time in my Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.